So, good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well wherever you are in the world at the moment. First off, I think maybe if I share my desktop, that might be better. Okay. So first off, just to answer Jennifer's question, can you all see my my Word document?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So the question was, generally speaking, especially in Mahayana tradition of Buddhism, the human realm is praised for having the best conditions for reaching Buddhahood. What if we just want to attain one of the stages of enlightenment, either the first through to the fourth fruit of arahatship? Is there a suitable place in the heavenly realm where we can continue our practice after this lifetime if we don't want to be reborn in the human realm? So the answer to this is actually not that straightforward because it will depend on what level you have achieved in your practice already. So basically, in terms of answering this question, I'm assuming that as a practitioner, you're only aiming for arahathood or arahatship. So I spent, ever since I got that question from Faye and discussing it with Venerable Tangzi, basically we started searching the whole of the Taisho canon. So that's why I have to apologize to Professor Rome. During your talk last night, my camera was off because I was also basically going through the whole Taisho on Sabeta. And trying to do two things at once, multitasking. So I found several guidances that we can get from the sutras and the Buddhist canon. Now, one is from the Zengyi Ahan Jing, which is the Ekotarika Agama, and there is no equivalent or parallel teaching in the numerical discourses of the Nikaya for this particular sutra. So I'm assuming, I didn't post it to Faye to send it to everyone because I'm assuming most of you will not be able to read this anyway. So you'll just have to trust my brief translation to give you an idea of why the human realm is considered ideal. And in this particular sutra, you have the classical start, 如是我闻, thus I have heard. At one time, where was this, taught? And so this is the start of the actual teaching. And the Buddha here is telling the bhikkhus that when a being that is in the heavenly realms, when their lifespan comes to an end, they have 5 traits that start to show, which indicate that their lifespan in that particular heaven is coming to an end. And so what happens is they start to look for where they can go next, which is a place that is ideal. And you'd be surprised, to the heavens, the Buddha teaches us that the human realm is ideal. So they're not actually hoping to be reborn in the heavens again. They're actually hoping to be reborn in the human realm. And so the Buddha will in this particular verse or gatha, which tends to then summarize all of what is said here, the key points, it says, the human realm is considered by the heavenly realms as the wholesome place or the ideal place. And the the good friends or the spiritual teachers and the spiritual guides there are considered the wholesome benefits that you can gain. And then to be able to renounce is considered to be the wholesome activity that one can undertake in the human realm. And with that, one is able to end their defilements and attain the state of undefilement. So this is why in the heavenly realms, the beings actually look to the human realm. And so what this is really saying is this in essence is capturing the path of practice. So as a human, in the human realm, it's good because this is where you can find the Buddha. This is where you can hear the Dharma. And you find the Dharma, you hear the Dharma from spiritual teachers. And they give you that special, this is like a special benefit that you can get here. And it's here that you can actually renounce and take on the spiritual practice as your career. And if done well, then you will attain, you'll be able to end your defilements, which means to gain liberation. So, sorry, this particular red section here is something that gave inspiration to Venerable Yin-Shun as to why is the human realm so superior. And it reminds us that all the Buddhas, they all come to the human realm and not to the heavenly realms in order to attain their final liberation, their final Buddhahood. So you then have to ask, if there was a better place in the heavens, why wouldn't the Buddha go there? So the human realm is ideal for not only the qualities that humans possess, but for the fact that the Buddhas in their wisdom can see that this realm is the most ideal for spiritual practice to attain liberation, not just Buddhahood. So for those who think, well, I don't want to go through the whole three major eons or kalpas to attain Buddhahood, and I just want to become an arahat. Then further research into the Abhidhamma Mahavibhasa Shastra, which is Abhidhamma or Tapiposalun. So to get a more refined answer to your question, Jennifer, about whether if you are only aiming for the first fruit or the second fruit, is there another place? And this is where the Abhidhamma studies, in all its technicalities, can really drill down into some of the finer details. So again, basically, this section here, someone actually asks that same, very similar question actually. So perhaps this was you in a past life asking this question. So what this person is asking in particular is about 顺觉者分, and this is regarding the factors conducive to penetrating insight, which means to having insight into the truth. And once you gain that insight into the truth, that effectively is the first fruit. One thing you need to know with your question about, can you just choose, oh, I only want to attain to the second fruit and that's it, I don't want to go further, I just want to continue there. Based on the Buddhist teachings, both in the Theravada and the Mahayana tradition, once you've attained the first fruit, you really don't have much of a further option to push a pause button. It's a bit like, when you've fired an arrow and it's left the bow, you can't then say, okay, stop there, it's far enough, it's high enough. it'll continue to go until you hit the target. So once you've attained, once you've gone past these 4 stages and attained the first fruit of the Shrotapanna, you are destined to gain arahathood. And time-wise, it can be anything from within that immediate same life or up to a maximum of 7 rounds of lives in the human and the heavenly realms. However, this particular discussion here tells us that if you want to gain arahathood, the final liberation in the heavens, you need to have attained the first fruit. The first fruit, based on the arguments and the debates here, is only attainable in the human realm. So, assuming you haven't attained the first fruit yet, you really don't have an option but to try and aim to gain a human rebirth to be able to continue your practice. But once you have attained the first fruition, then because you are already equipped with the wisdom that can see and penetrate the truth, and you know the rest of the path of practice to complete liberation, it can be in any of the heavens, or you can come back to the human realm. So if you really want to know why you've got no choice but the human realm to get past the first hurdle of the first fruition, it's because there's these, just prior to the first fruition, you have what's called these conducive factors. And they are really referring to what's called the 4 wholesome roots, Susangan. And these are the stage of warmth, the stage of the summit or the tipping point, the stage of forbearance. I'll come back to this in a bit later. And then the final stage of Shidiyifa, which is the highest worldly wisdom, which then allows you to break through to transcendental wisdom. Now here, forbearance, the Chinese word literally does mean to forbear. But when used in the Buddhist context, and specifically when talking about stages just prior to attaining insight, it actually is in relation to a level of wisdom. So it doesn't mean to just be able to tolerate or bear something. You're able to forbear something because you have the wisdom that gives you enough idea or enough insight into the situation that it makes things very easy. It makes it very easy for you to be able to bear it. So it goes on to ask, you know, where in which realm can these be attained? So once you've attained these 4 wholesome roots, you will then attain the first fruition. And after the first fruition, you can then progress through, whether you want to or not, you will naturally progress through to the final attainment of arahathood. And so here it talks about all the different realms, you know, the desire realm and the desire and the heavenly realms and so forth. And the main thing here is that in the other heavens, the form and the formless realms, it tells that these 4 wholesome roots do not exist. And therefore, as a result of that, you have to basically be a human in order to come and learn the Dharma, practice the Dharma, and attain the first fruit. After attaining the first fruit, then the rest of the practice can be carried out anywhere, because by that time you would have had the wisdom and insight that you needed to be able to gain the final liberation. So can you read Chinese? If you can, I can send you these details.
Yes, I can read Chinese. Not great. It'll take me some time, but I could do it.
Okay, because this is quite technical, particularly the sections from the Mahavipassana, because you're getting into the Abhidhamma discussions, and there are a lot of technical terms as well. But just to, you know, to summarize everything in layman terms, is that for the Arahats, the stages prior to the first fruition are these four wholesome roots. And these four wholesome roots are only found in the human form, the human realm. So, but once, you know, like I said, once you've attained to this insight, you know the path, you know how to go already. And that's why the teachings will say a maximum of 7 rounds of lives in the human and the heavenly realms, then arahathood will be accomplished. So, but exactly where, in which realm, there's no real specified realm. However, and this is the final technicality, so this is a more detailed explanation of the Buddhist cosmology. So the immaterial world is the formless realm. The fine material world is the form realm. And then you have the sensuous world, which is the realm of desire. So in the realm of form, when I showed you that simple diagram in my slides, remember I said there was either 16 or 17 levels of heavens. And that last level is what is called the 5 pure abodes. And for those who want the Chinese name, it's Wu Jing Ju Tian. This level in the form realm is only accessible by the practitioners who have attained the third fruition, and they're in their final life before arahathood. It doesn't mean all arahats in the third fruition have to come here, but this is one specific abode that is mentioned, that talks about how it's the non-returners, those who have already attained the third fruition, and basically in this last and final life, that's when they will attain, become an arahat. And this is one place they can be reborn in. But it's not something that the arahats will say, okay, I'm on my first fruition now. I think I want to go to the realm of the very fruitful devas for my next life. So it's not like you can choose. It's still something that comes from the karma that they have created. And for a lot of these, the reason why they for this particular case, the reason is once they get to the third fruition, they don't have the defilements anymore that accord with the desire realm. So there is nothing, they don't have those defilements that can actually cause the karmic seeds for rebirth in the desire realm to come to fruit. But because of their meditative practices at that time, they do accord with this particular level in the form realm. And so that's why they, there is this particular level, the 5 pure abodes, where these non-returners will take their last life before they become an arahat. So if you're wanting to have some idea of which heaven that is specifically named, there are these 5 abodes, but it's only for the non-returners prior to them becoming arahats. As for, if you read the actual sutras and all that, you will see often that a lot of the Buddha's disciples in the early days, most of them would have heard the Buddha's teachings or heard from the disciples some of the Buddha's teachings, and it's almost like instantaneously they attain the first fruit. And then a little while later, they hear some further teachings, and then it's the second fruit. And then sometimes in a really profound teaching, they'll jump from the second fruit right through to arahathood straight away. So there's no, even though the sequence is from, you know, first, second, third, and fourth, it varies for the different people and the different practitioners depending on their own spiritual practice and how they have practiced over time. So does that help answer your question?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for spending so much time and collecting all of this super helpful information.
That's all right. I wasn't sure how far you were going to dig in.
Well, so my follow-up question was, you mentioned about the 4 routes for penetrating insights, right? The 4 factors, and how it cannot arise. Essentially, it can only arise in the sensual realm.
In the human realm.
Oh.
The sensual realm also covers the hells and all that, and the animals. So it's specific to the human realm.
I think specifically what I heard was that, for example, the Tusita heaven, which is in the, I guess you would call it the lower heavens, which is also in, I guess, the sensual realm.
Yes.
And specifically in the inner court, or Yin, right? That is where the next Buddha, Milofo, is residing right now, waiting for kind of rebirth. And there I heard you can continue to actually hear his teachings and continue to practice there. And because it is in the sensual realm, you can still give rise to those 4 factors. But maybe this is where kind of the details between different schools start to differ.
Perhaps, but I think you, because your question was framed in that you don't want to attain Buddhahood. So following from the Abhidharma teachings, this is what they've taught, because the Tushita heaven, the inner realm, only the inner garden is where all the next Buddhas reside in their prior life. So you can still hear the teachings and all that there, but if you look at the way it's being taught in the Mahayana, all those who follow that particular Buddha learning there, their final liberation still relies on that Buddha coming down to earth and attaining Buddhahood, and them listening in the human realm. So, and some people will say, well, there's the very few exceptions, such as Chakra, who gained the first fruit, and when the Buddha went to teach the Dharma to his mother in the heavens, apparently after that she, Queen Maya, gained the first fruit. But when Chakra gained the first fruit, he actually came down to the human realm and heard the teachings from the Buddha. So it was not that he practiced on his own in his heavenly realm. So all these connections basically point to, you need to be able to have access to the Dharma, and the Dharma is only revealed by a Buddha, and the Buddhas only attain Buddhahood in the human realm.
Yeah, I guess I haven't decided whether I want to attain Buddhahood or maybe Arhathood, but it's just good to know, who knows at what point our lives will end, to know where when I do my transference of merit on a daily basis, you know,
Yeah.
where do I want to be reborn? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So, well, hopefully, you know, whichever place, I guess the main aim would then be to be in a place where you can meet with the Buddha and the Dharma to actually give you the guidance to get to the point of liberation. Okay. So back to our discussion and talks on karma. So over the last 2 lessons, we've covered the bulk of what is karma, looking at the moral aspects of karma, the different types of karma and its categorizations and karmic forces and the characteristics. So now we move on to the 3 life cycle and how this is very important in understanding the teachings on karma in the Buddhist teachings. So when we have this, the right view, after listening to the Dharma and we establish this right view that wholesome karma brings happiness and unwholesome karma yields suffering, this needs to be understood and can only be fully appreciated if you also pair it with the theory of the 3 life cycles, which means that we do have a past life, we have a present life, and we will have future life. Without this belief, it's very hard for some people to explain certain things. And there are some people who actually can't fathom that there is a past life, and some can't even think about there's a future life either. So for them, when you talk to them about karma, and you know, as we said, karma doesn't always ripen in this present life, they will see a mismatch, and to them it will be, I don't think karma really works because I don't see proper justice occurring in this world. So this type of mentality can lead to despair because you feel like you have no control, you just have to take what comes. Or it can actually lead to a lot of recklessness because people feel, well, once I'm dead, it's all over, so I can do whatever I like. And that's why it's important that we also understand and view karma and karmic forces, cause and its effects over 3 life cycles. Now, for the Chinese, culturally, they do believe in cause and effect, and they do believe that what we do, there are results that come about it. However, they think that the results can also be borne out by their descendants. So sometimes people will say, oh, it's because your ancestors did all this bad thing, that's why your family is constantly such and such and such. So this type of theory has some failings because it doesn't explain why some parents are really good, but their children are really bad, and vice versa. Because if the parents are really good and all the wholesome karma the parent created were to be, you know, enjoyed by the children, why are the children's situation so bad then? And then you have the situation of people like, you know, us monastics. We don't have children, we don't have descendants. What happens to our karma? So the beliefs of that there are no past lives, no future lives, or the belief that someone else enjoys or suffers your results has a lot of failings that cannot be explained. And then there are those who do believe in a 2 life cycle, that there is a future life. And this will include the theistic religions. So this, if we think about religion in general, you know, it's the aim should be to to give people a theory and a framework that they can accept and guide them to live a life that is wholesome and happy and so forth. Under the theist belief that there is a creator, so that's how they deal with the past. That, you know, the past is that we started from being created by a creator God, whether it was Brahma, whether it was God as per the Christian religions and so forth. And, you know, they're taught that if you don't create sins and you follow what you're being told, you know, you don't break any of the commandments and so forth, you're rewarded with a future life, an eternal life in heaven. So this can actually be quite a good motivation tool to help people live a good life. But by that same token, depending on what they're taught as how to get to heaven and that eternal, you know, life in heaven, they can still create harm. And a very classic and obvious example in present day is the acts of terrorism, because a lot of those, you know, the terrorist activities, they're all trying to be martyrs. They're all trying to save their and uphold the teachings of their God and so forth. So depending on their definition of what is right and what is wrong, the actions created can still be harmful. The Buddha's teachings, on the other hand, with karma and the three life cycle, really puts the responsibility back on ourselves. And this tells us that, you know, what we experience now is because of what we have done in the past, both in this life and in past lives. So we have to bear the responsibility for it. Now, it may sound pessimistic, but we should actually look at it in terms of an optimistic view, in that we can't change our past, but knowing this now, we can actually actively carve out our future, because we know what we should do and what we shouldn't do. So if you are currently stuck in an unfortunate situation, you might be constantly unemployed, or a lot of people are unemployed now with COVID, but if you're in a situation where you're just constantly not in circumstances that make you happy, that make you safe and so forth, you can reflect on it and say, I probably did have some role to play in terms of my past karmic actions, but what can I do now to quickly let that bad karma run out its course a lot faster? So you can undertake the practices of repentance if that suits you. But even better would be to just diligently practice morality, compassion, generosity, improving your three karmas and so forth. And in this way, what you're doing is you're building up good karmic forces to mitigate or offset the past unwholesome karma that is actually ripening now. So by the same token, when we see other people caught in a bad situation, or when people are born with deformities and disabilities and so forth, yes, we should reflect on karma and, you know, how scary it can be, the way it works. But we shouldn't then say, well, they deserve it, you know, this is their past doing. We always have to remember that the Buddhist teachings, whether it is the Theravadan teachings or the Mahayana teachings, it is grounded also in wisdom and compassion. So when we look at these things, we should use this understanding of karma to help us appreciate how certain situations would have come about. But then we need to apply wisdom and apply compassion to the situation as well. Now, compassion should be applied to both ourselves and to other people. So one thing I need to stress is don't, you know, some people, for some reason, when they hear about these teachings on karma, the way they think about it and the way they apply it and reflect on it leads them to become very depressed, very negative, and this really shouldn't be the outcome. And if it is, then it does mean that the way you're practicing it and all that, you really need to maybe go and talk to a spiritual guide, a venerable about it, because these teachings on karma should actually be a positive for us, to allow us to understand the situation a bit better. And then with the other practices of Buddhism, you know, to accept it and tolerate it with a mind that is calm, but to also have compassion for ourselves and for other people. And then to just basically work hard to make amends, to practice those 4 diligence and so forth. So remember, when we see people in unfortunate situations and all that, don't just think, oh, you deserve it. You know, we should think, how can we help them? We need to also apply empathy and wisdom to these practices as well. So, you know, karma is fair, but the way things pan out, it can be quite cruel and scary as well. So as Venerable Tangci, you know, teaches, we can't recall what we have done yesterday or last week and so forth. So it wouldn't be a surprise that we can't actually recall our past lives. And some people will think, but if we did have a past life, I should remember it. We have a present life and we can't remember the whole of that. So, but if we fully accept that the Buddha is omniscient and through the practice of his teachings, you know, you should start to realize more and more how true it is, then developing this understanding, this faith in karma and the 3 life cycles, it should motivate us to really stop doing bad deeds and to change our poor behaviors. And it should motivate us to be diligent in creating good karma, to undertake good deeds, to purify our conduct. And more so, when we know this is the way out of suffering, we should also share it with other people. Now, by sharing it with other people, I don't mean you go and, you know, just go and drill into them. Hey, did you know there's this thing called karma? There's this thing called the 3 life cycle. You better do good and you better stop doing bad. You don't have to share the teachings in that way. You also need to apply your wisdom to see how much they can accept. If they can't accept any of it, then all you do is just encourage them to do more good deeds. So perhaps you're planning on going to help out at a volunteer center. Bring them along. You know, you don't have to tell them, this is just because I want to help you create good karma. You just bring them along to do that charity work and all that. And that's what I also mean by sharing this understanding with others. So remember that karma is rational and fair, but it should be understood with the supports of compassion, and for the Mahayana, it should be understood with the support of great compassion and wisdom. So we're all caught in this cycle of life and death, and we cycle through the 6 realms. Now, when we cycle through these 6 realms, there's no sequence. So it's not like you go to the human realm and then your next life is definitely in the heavens. And then after the heavens, you head back to the hells, and then from the hells up to, there's no set sequence. It's basically whatever karma ripens at the time of your death, then depending on that karma, that's the particular realm you will go to. So I guess in this sense, you know, the $1 million question is, which karma ripens to determine our next destination? And the answer is that there isn't a specific that we can point to. Only the Buddha can tell you that with his perfect wisdom. However, there are 3 principles that you can use to help you in your practice. And the first is that the karma from a very, very, very strong deed will ripen first to determine your next destination. Then, if you don't have that, it becomes the karmic force from a habitual tendency, a habit that you have. And then if you don't have that, it becomes the karmic force from the very last thought prior to the cessation of all bodily and mental functions. So let's look at these 3 karmas in a bit more detail. So the first one is the karmic force from a very strong deed. Now this can be either good or bad. Okay, so for example, attaining tranquil karma is very strong. Attaining or committing, any of the 5 extreme faults is very strong. And so if someone has created very strong karma in this sense, then very often for those, I don't know if any of you have had a lot of experience with palliative care for the dying, but from the stories that we've heard from our teachers and some from my own experience and so forth, when a dying person is approaching the time of death, the moment of death, sometimes they get visions, and those visions can actually be like an omen indicating where their next life will be. So that if someone has committed something, has created a karmic force that is really strong like this, then these visions of the next life is an indication of that karmic force starting to develop and ripen. And then after the actual death of this life, so the bodily functions, the mental functions and all that cease, then that force, that karmic force fully ripens by bringing that being to that next realm and to take on that next bodily form. So the real, I guess one thing we need to understand is for the ordinary person, you and I, it's highly unlikely that we would even meet with the conditions to do something really great. It's not impossible, because, you know, you do have some people that have done really great deeds and that provides them with that very strong karma. But for example, not many of us are going to go out there and commit the 5 extreme faults. So if we don't have this type of very strong karmic force, then the next force to come into play is karmic force that has been developed out of your habit. So this goes back to the previous teaching on how karmic forces can grow. So remember, a minor deed, but if repeated and becoming habitual, even to the point of being an addiction and so forth, that can actually develop into a very strong karmic force. So in the Samyukta Agama Sutra 930, oops, sorry, go back. How come it's not, how come it's, okay. So in this particular sutra, Mahanama, the Sakyan clan leader, he goes and he asks the Buddha, and he says basically that he's scared to die in the village crossroads, because there is where he loses his mindfulness of the triple gem. So normally, in most cases, Mahanama practices his recollection of the Buddha, his mindfulness of the triple gem. But at the crossroads of the village, it's really chaotic with people and with the bullock carts and so forth. And he says he's scared that if he happens to die there, and because he doesn't have mindfulness at that point in time of the triple gem, he fears that he will actually regress to maybe one of the lower realms, the evil destinies. And the Buddha then tells him that he need not fear, because his usual practice of right mindfulness will direct him towards wholesomeness. So that the Buddha likens to a tree that is growing and slanted heavily to the eastern direction. When it falls, it will fall in the eastern direction. So this is a way to understand that if you, by habit, develop wholesomeness, you develop a habit that is directed towards wholesomeness, and particularly for us as Buddhist and spiritual practitioners, one that's more wholesome is a practice that's related to Buddhism and the teachings of purification and so forth. So if you can develop these type of habits, then this will become a strong karmic force for you that will direct you to a much better location for the next life. Oh. Why does it keep jumping to slides? Okay. So now for not all people are Buddhists, so not everyone's going to be practicing mindfulness of the triple gem, or their chants and their meditation and so forth. So what happens to people in the situation where they don't have a very strong karmic force, or they don't have a force from a habit? Then the very last thought in this case is what is very important. Now, if you think about it, as a human being, we cling to this body as our identity. So when you're about to face death, there's a lot of questions, and there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear and confusion that can arise. Now, in this confusion and in this state where, you need to understand the body becomes weaker and weaker. And when the body becomes weak, the mind is also affected as well. So what happens in these situations is sometimes the person can recollect something. They might have some thought. Now, if that thought is wholesome, they might think back to, the days when, they were a volunteer helping out at the homeless shelter or whatever. And that brings on a lot of happiness and comfort in them. These type of wholesome recollections provide the conditions for their wholesome karma to ripen. But by the same token, vice versa, if that thought that comes up is actually negative, then it provides opportunity and the conditions for the negative past karma to ripen. And that's one reason why in a lot of the Buddhist palliative care practices, we don't know if that person has created a strong karmic force or if they have a habit. But when we go in and we're faced with this person that's dying, what we can do practically is to help them maintain happy thoughts and hopefully rely on this last thought to help them gain a happy rebirth or a good future life. And you see this a lot with the Pure Land practice, where when they're spending time with the dying person, You give them Dharma teachings about the beautiful place of the Amitabha's pure land and so forth. And then you just teach them to chant, and you give them that idea or the understanding. As long as you're chanting and recollecting the Buddha's name in your heart, then that's all that matters. Don't think about anything else. And the reason mainly is so that there's no opportunity for any negative thoughts and memories to come into play. And here I'd like to share a story that one of our teachers have told us before, and I think Venerable Tangzi has shared it with the Chinese class as well. There used to be this monk that prior to becoming a monk, he was actually a chef. And in his role as a chef in one of the restaurants, what happened was some of the food was contaminated by mice. So, of course, you know, being the chef there, you get in trouble for that because it's food poisoning. So he developed this really strong hatred towards the mice, and he came up with all sorts of ways to try and catch them. Now, when he caught them, he would, you know, turn on a huge boiling pot of water and he would boil them alive. And he would delight in that because he hated the mice so much. Fast forward, you know, he then meets with the conditions to become a monk and practice. And he's no longer here now, but the days leading up to his passing, the other monks that were helping to look after him started to notice something. Even though they were trying to tell him to, you know, think back to his Buddhist practice and all that, at nighttime, he would be making all these really strange squealing and screeching noise like a mouse. And it was because the thoughts of what he did, the regret he now has towards what he did was so great. Those were the only thoughts that kept filling his mind. So if a person has created very strong karmic deeds or a habitual tendency in the past, sometimes it's very hard to use this method of the last thought to try and help them at their dying moments. So remember, the order of dominance, generally speaking, is that the karmic force from a very strong deed will ripen first. If you don't have that, it'll come from your habitual tendencies. And if you don't have that, then work on maintaining the last thought to be a happy one. So the lesson to really get from this is to avoid very strong and bad karmic deeds. If you have the opportunity to do something really, really good, then definitely seize the opportunity, okay, as an insurance. But for most of us, it's probably a lot easier and a lot more practical to be like Mahanama and just continually generate and develop good habits, to develop good practices. And this is a way we can grow our karmic force that guides us towards wholesomeness. Because remember, we don't know when and where we will die. If we're fortunate enough to, you know, to die from a terminal illness and actually be able to prepare for it, it might be a better situation because we might be able to have people by our side giving us help and guidance. But what happens if you get hit by a bus? What happens if you're out camping or you know, on holidays and you fall over a cliff? In those situations, which are very real, you do hear about these situations on the news, you're on your own. What are you going to rely on? So as a Buddhist practitioner, you know, our insurance is our practice. Given time, I'm just going to quickly go through these last few slides so that we can start tomorrow's class on defilement. And then I'll do the metta meditation after that. So we might go over time a little bit. I hope that's okay with everyone. So this endless cycle of going through one life after the next, you know, in a life where we're in the heavens and everything is really good and all that, we may not think, hey, this is not so bad. Why do I need to get out of this? But in the whole scheme of things, we really don't have much freedom when we're cycling through life and death, because we can't choose where we are reborn. You know, it's all based on the karmic forces that we have created. So it's this movement from one life to the next, I think is much easier to understand with the simile of a flame. So when a flame is burning, we say that's one fire. But if you look carefully, each flame, the first and the second flame, are actually not the same, but they're interlinked. You can't have the second flame without the first. So we can't have this current life without our past life, but the past and our present life is not exactly the same. And there is no fixed soul that, you know, moves from one body to the next. That's one thing we need to get clear. So the karma of this life is like the fuel of the fire burning, and once it starts to burn out, once all that fuel load burns out, the fire dwindles down. But when you add more fuel, then a new fire begins. So these are pictures of the back half of where I am now. And this is the black summer we had, and the top is the picture I took 1 week after the fire came through our area. Everything completely scorched. But before it was really nice and green and lush. But surprisingly also, and this is also in my area, you know, 1 week after the fire, everything is scorched and black. But come April 20, a completely new scene. So this cycle will continue to go on. And when you're in, you know, the top picture of 1 week after the fire, I can tell you it's just absolutely miserable living at this point in time in this location, because you're constantly seeing injured animal and you're constantly trying to save them and so forth. And not just injured animal, the neighbors, you know, they're just so out of hope, no hope, and all full of despair. But then when you're in this situation where everything is nice and lush and there's a lot of greenery there for the animals to eat, and the animals are happy running around as well, you kind of think, hey, life's not so bad. So it's this constant cycle. But like the simile of the flame, you know, in each life we create karma, and that manifests as having a body, a mind, and the activities that occur. And when we die, that body and those mental activities cease. But that's a temporary cessation, because once the next set of karma comes about, all these activities will arise again. And with the fire example, after the fire came through here, I don't know if you realize, but things can continue to smolder for up to a month. So what happened was we had a really windy and gusty day, and there were a few trees that were still smoldering, and the embers got picked up and were taken several kilometers away and started a new fire at that new location. So very much like our lives, you know, it looks like we're dwindling and we're dying here. But once all those karmic forces come together, the winds of our past karma arises and carries, it can carry us to a new place, a new time, and start a new life there again. So in Buddhism, that's why we always stress attaining awakening is the best way to completely get out of this cycle. If you really want freedom, the best way is to get out of this cycle. And for some people, they may not really understand this, but if you practice and you attain to the divine eye, you can actually get glimpses of past and future lives and how the workings of karma come about. So in summary, every being wants peace, safety, and happiness, but sometimes the way we go about it actually creates more harm, and it gives us the opposite result. So to bear in mind, if you want peace, safety, and happiness, then just focus on creating good karma. And that means creating things that are beneficial to others and not harmful. Now, because without wisdom and compassion, sometimes when you try to help, you actually harm instead. So when we reflect on ourselves and our shortcomings and whatnot, because most of you, I don't think would be like any major bad criminal or whatnot, but we think of where can we improve? Can we improve on our anger management? You know, can we be a bit more tolerant? Can we be less lazy? Can we be a bit more diligent? Or are we really stingy? You know, maybe can we learn to be a bit more generous and so forth? So look into the more and more finer details to try and see how you can actually improve yourself and create more good karma. So I'll just... Okay, so remember, the positive view of karma and these teachings is to help us make good choices in our life, to make sure that we have the right conditions to learn the Dharma and to practice it and to make the most of this life. So seize all opportunities that you have to create good karma, so that you don't run out of good karmic forces. Okay, so sorry for really having to zip through and skip some of that, but the main idea to really try and understand is the teaching on karma should be positive, and it should actually help you in the practical sense to make choices that are wholesome, that are beneficial, and that do not bring harm. So tomorrow we'll be starting on the topic looking at defilement and how it is the crucial element that creates karma and allows karmic forces to come to fruition. And then we'll wrap it all up about what does this all mean in terms of our practice. Okay, so let me close this, and so we'll now go through to the metta meditation practice. So hopefully at the end of your day and the start of our day, we can all generate some loving kindness and share that loving kindness, especially in the times we're facing now. So let me just open it first. Okay, so get yourself into a really comfortable position. Okay, not too comfortable that you're going to fall asleep, but just comfortable enough that you can maintain a good level of concentration. Okay. So if you need to stretch your shoulders a bit, relax yourself, and then take a few deep breaths. With each breath, okay, just think of all the purity and wholesomeness that you can bring into you. And as you breathe out, just let go of all the worries, all the negativities, all the stress and tension. So do that a few times. And then bring your mind to focus on yourself. And to focus and allow the light of kindness to slowly develop inside you. And let that light grow, become stronger, become warmer, become brighter. And with sincerity and with good intentions and wishes, may I be safe, well, and happy. May I truly be safe, well, and happy. Now let that light continue to grow further. That kindness, that metta, let it pervade your whole body, protecting you. And when you are ready, let that overflow and spread further to beyond yourself. May my parents, my mother and my father, who have cared for me and nurtured me with much kindness, I wholeheartedly wish that they are safe, well, and happy. Now let the kindness get stronger. Let it shine even further. May my teachers and spiritual guides, who compassionately and patiently show me the way, I genuinely wish that they are safe, well, and happy. Let your kindness know no boundaries. Just let it grow and grow and spread it out even further. May my family, my partner, my brothers and sisters and close friends, all of those who have been there for me, have given me companionship and friendship, I sincerely wish, may they be safe, well, and happy. Now let kindness break through even more barriers. To my work colleagues, my neighbors, and people in my community. Some I may have gotten along with, some who may have annoyed me, but I still truly wish that they all can be safe, well, and happy. Now to my enemies, to those who have given me a lot of distress and sadness, may I learn to let go. May I put down my disliking and anger and be able to restore a harmonious relationship. I really do wish that they too can be safe, well, and happy. May all beings in these difficult times find shelter, protection, and comfort. May we all be free from hatred, desires, and danger. May we all be free from mental suffering. May we all be free from physical suffering. May we all truly be well, safe, and happy. So let that light of kindness just shine on and let it stretch as far as you can let it go. Then when you are ready, we will start to slowly draw this session back. May all beings truly be safe, well, and happy. May my enemies also be safe, well, and happy. May my work colleagues, my neighbors, the people in my community, may they all be safe, well, and happy. May my family, my partners, my brothers and sisters, and close friends, may they all be safe, well, and happy. May my teachers and the spiritual guides, may they all be safe, well, and happy. May my dear parents, may they truly be safe, well, and happy. So draw the attention back to yourself. May I be safe, well, and happy. Let that kindness stay with you so that you can project it out whenever it's needed, to whoever it's needed. Let that kindness guide you through the day, and let that kindness be by your side as you rest. So take a few deep breaths, and when you're ready, you may open your eyes.